Insight 43, indirect inputs. So the 42 was direct inputs from outside. This is indirect inputs, which is the same as suggestive inputs from outside. So indirect inputs from outside are of a very deceptive nature. They are deceptive because they might come to you openly, conveying a seemingly innocent message. However, by the virtue of the connection to other ideas, the seemingly innocent message might be guiding your consciousness to those other hidden ideas. Your mind naturally notices and follows those connections, arriving at the hidden ideas. Therefore, you might mistakenly believe that you generated those extended hidden thoughts on your own, but in fact they were a result of the suggestive inputs, directing your mind to a desired destination. Okay, so now this is actually written in the bold insight itself. Those of you who have studied earlier insights, you've noticed that I've mentioned something of this, about this, in the explanation of some of the examples. Explanation part of the insights of the earlier ones. Okay, good. So it'll be a review for some of you. Indirect inputs. So suggestive. They're not coming to you straight away. They're giving you, hey, you feel like going to the park? Somebody saying, I want to go to the park, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to say, hey, do you feel like going to the park? It's an indirect way of going about it. Yeah. Often women use indirect ways of talking because direct is they're not used to getting their way directly, even though that is with a lot of people. They might do it with parents, or they might do it sneakily. A lot of men who are shorter or less powerful may use indirect means as well, because they cannot do it straight away, tell you straight away, this is what I want to get my way because of strength. But because there's a lack of strength, they might use an indirect way of getting what they want. This is also true for people who lack are in a lack of a position that lacks power. They might use indirect means. So, indirect inputs. So somebody's inputting information into you indirectly, in a hidden way, in a suggestive way, from outside, from somebody else to you, right? They are deceptive because they might come to you openly conveying a seemingly innocent message. It's very dangerous, yeah. However, by the virtue, meaning by of their connection, because they are connected, they come to you with this information. Hey, here's the information I give to you. Openly, I come to you this way. But because this information is connected, here I'll make it like this. So this is the information, but this information that I'm giving you is connected. Naturally, it's just naturally connected to other ideas. The seemingly innocent message might be guiding your consciousness to those other hidden ideas. Your mind naturally, quite naturally, notices and follows those connections. Quite naturally notices and follows those connections, arriving at the hidden ideas which are here. Therefore, you might mistakenly believe that you generated those extended hidden thoughts on your own. But in fact, they were a result of the suggestive inputs directing your mind to a desired destination. It's important for you to master this information so that you will not succumb to manipulations by others, by all sorts of methods. Let me say that another way. It's important for you to master this information so you do not get tricked by other people's manipulation. Now, an example of this would be, let's say a person comes and starts describing their situation. You know, they might even start with a sad look. You know, that's why it's so deceptive, because you think you're doing this on your own, and this happened by itself. So, for example, you might be a person who wants to manipulate very, very deceptively might put themselves in a public place to be seen and look sad. This brings on an onlooker who says, "Oh, how come you look sad? You know, you seem sad. Are you okay? You know?" And then you say, "Well, you know, yeah, but I have this problem, you know, and it's bugging the hell out of me or something." And they say, "What's going on?" They say, and you start describing the problem. So this person describes the problem, which is quite tragic, quite a dilemma. And so this, because of its tragic and puzzling nature, this problem captures the mind of the other person, right? And this problem can be solved quite easily by somebody who has some money to give to this person, but this person is not going to ask anybody. He's just describing his problem, setting the trap. Then this person, now see, the thing is, when this person is describing their problem, and obviously what the solution obviously is, without directly mentioning it, the solution. "Oh, I need to go there, you know, to visit my family. I'm too far away, you know, and I'm very sad." You know, this person is not mentioning directly that what they need is a ticket to go there, because that would be too obvious. So it's, "Oh, just, you know, that's all, you know," and they describe the heart-wrenching situation that they're in. The other person thinks to themselves, "Well, the solution is very simple. I just could buy this person a ticket, you know, cost me £45, $45, whatever it is. Buy this person a ticket and get them home. It'll be so good because to get them out of their tragic situation." Here, the person now has manipulated the other person without the other person knowing. They offered the solution. Okay, so that's an example. I'm going to read from the explanation. There are tons of unspoken suggestive influences prevalent, meaning quite available widely, in daily life. In essence, they are influencing measures of control on you without you knowing it. They can manipulate you through suggestions, and those of you who are in a receptive mode might be placed in certain moods. When in those moods, you are inclined to follow what your mood is like. Your mind at that moment is overpowered and taken over by the moods. More clearly stated, your mind is a blank canvas. If you choose to focus on suggestions, then your mind will be filled with those suggestions. The next step is inevitable. Your mind is forced to follow those planted suggestions because you have fed your mind only one reality to focus on. Your mind has no other choice to follow. If there are any other choices of reality or data, they are pale by comparison because they do not seem real. They do not seem real because you choose not to focus intently on their reality. However, you have chosen to focus with intensity on one reality, the sexual way of thinking, or what other reality the other person is projecting. Therefore, that one reality is the reality which your mind is overwhelmingly established in. That becomes the mind's reality, which is the reality that your mind can taste, feel, and understand the pleasures of. In the case that you focus on a negative aspect, you can feel its displeasures, pains, and sufferings. You might be able to bypass the one reality by your remembrance of the old feelings. and by the remembrance of the old reality, by remembering that even though you are in a sexual mood now, you remember that there is another reality, another mood which did make sense, which provided you with truth and peace, etc. This is less frequently achieved because one tends to follow the mood that one is experiencing presently, not the mood one once experienced in the past. For in the moment, the past mood is not felt as real. A lot of times, the reality of wanting to experience the sexual pleasure pulls us back. This is so because the sexual pleasure is stronger than many other ideas. Realize that it is all right to want to experience sexual pleasure. It is pleasurable. A lot of times, as you have come to know, it is not that you have chosen the sexual reality, but that the reality of sex, which others present to you, seems very intriguing and very different to the mind. Therefore, the mind is captured by the dramatic differences presented to it. The mind is focused on it. The danger, the fun, the excitement, the feeling, etc., simply because it stands out. Again, the mind is focused on it simply because it stands out, and the sexual pleasure stands out from other pleasures of life also. Once you notice how this trick is done, or produced and presented in a multi-layered fashion, and once you get out of the habit of being affected by its dualities, you will be conscious of it more and more, enabling you to increasingly disregard the tricky misinformation. Hence, there will be far fewer effects felt by you, with far less potency. So, insight 44. Now, the previous insights, the past two insights, I mentioned inputs that is data coming to you from outside, that is directly given to you or indirectly, but they're coming from the outside. The indirect way was a suggestive way. Now we're talking about the inside inputs. Inputs, that is data coming to you from within you. Inside inputs are generated from our thoughts, imagination, emotions, and some are generated from bodily sensations, having to do with how the body feels with itself and its internal functions. Okay, so explanation. As you know, the thoughts of a person, imagination, and feelings can be entirely generated by the person themselves, without any outside influences. Therefore, those thoughts, imagination, and feelings and their influences that are generated from within are categorized as internal. The bodily functions such as heartbeat, digestive system, and all other functions of the body, when running smoothly, generate a positive influence over the person. And when they are not running properly, they generate a negative influence. These influences are again being generated from the inside. Therefore, they too are categorized as internal. A person can be the cause of their own arousal through thought and imagination, or they might think of a thought that leads to thoughts on sex. So I'll read that again. Or they might think of a thought that leads to thoughts on sex. The emotional state of a person might lead to sexuality directly, or the emotions could trigger thoughts, which then give rise to sexual feelings. So it's like we're showing how thoughts can generate thoughts on sex, emotions can generate thoughts that lead to sexual thoughts. Also, we're talking about how the body does the same thing too. The body itself is an active machine, constantly in motion, internally. Any and all bodily functions cause physical changes within the body, and any of these changes could trigger a sensation, emotion, thought, or imagination that could lead to sexuality. It is important to be aware of these methods for the purpose of not being surprised by them. It's about, again, being conscious rather than behaving unconsciously, meaning falling into a sexual behavior that has been generated by a bodily function and you not knowing about it. I'm going to give you an example of that. So, a simple rattle in the stomach. So, you know how sometimes your stomach makes a growling noise or some noise like that or some feeling like that. So a simple rattle in the stomach could remind you of a waterfall, and a lady underneath it being drenched and sexuality ensues. Meaning you were led into sexuality. So a little feeling in the stomach, or it might remind you of, like bubbling water or falling water. You might think of bubbling water. You might think of, bubbling water in a, what do you call it, sauna? As a, where you sit down in a pool that is hot. I think it's a sauna. And jacuzzi, yes. And you might think of another person, a partner, being in there, and then so now you're thinking of sexual thoughts. You see, now you've a simple bodily function connected to that thought. You just allow that connections. Anyway, the physical sensation of being covered by a soft blanket. Again, so let's say you're tired, you want to stay warm, you go into the soft blanket, and because you have all of your body or parts of your body naked, parts of your body, maybe all or parts naked. So the physical sensation of being covered by a soft, fluffy blanket might remind one of fur and of the pleasing sensation of a naked body on the luxurious fur. Hence, sexual thoughts might arise. Therefore, sexual thoughts might arise. So this was showing you again how the body might, bodily functions might give rise to sexual thoughts. '45. Now we are to suggestive influences from the inside, brought on by oneself, are usually a product of accidental mental associations connected to sex, such as taking one's clothes off in order to sleep. At that moment, one might become conscious of one's own nakedness. Noticing the connection between nakedness and the nakedness in sex, one might be on the path toward arousal. Likewise, when one is getting a massage, changing clothes, or bathing. Therefore, in these obvious instances, and many not very obvious situations, we see that the mind makes connections. You follow the direction of the thoughts. You follow the direction of the thoughts from the first thought to sexual thoughts by means of related intermediary thoughts. Suggestive inputs generated from your own imagination and emotions have the same interplay with mental associations as do first thought to intermediary thoughts to sexual thoughts. I'll read that again. Threw me for a loop. Okay. Suggestive inputs generated from your own imagination and emotions have the same interplay with mental associations. Okay. So we're showing the connection between suggestive inputs generated from your own imagination or emotions or thoughts have the same interplay with mental associations as do first thought to intermediate thoughts to sexual thoughts. So it's the same thing. Suggestive inputs by your own body. Suggestive inputs by your own body could be generated from an accidental touch, moving, shaking, such as dancing, or by any other sensory engagement of any sensitive part of the body by a table or other object, person, or by oneself. Under the explanation, there are many thought pathways. That's what the thought pathways are, the intermediary thoughts that lead to sexual arousal. You might try to get control over your arousal in order to be not aroused without wanting to. Again, let me read that again. You might try to get control over your arousal in order to be not aroused without wanting to. You might achieve partial success for a while, and then you might all of a sudden become aroused without knowing exactly why. Do not be disappointed with yourself. because disappointment in this situation might give the impression that you have again done the same mistake. However, it is not quite so. In this instance, you blocked the onslaught of unwanted influences from one side, and they entered through another side. In addition, if the onslaughts to your mind use the same way, they may have used another technique, or they may have used the same technique with more potency. You must recognize that you are improving your blocking ability, and meanwhile, with each mistake, you are becoming conscious of how and in what various ways these unwanted influences make their way inside into your consciousness. Oh, this is so very important. Every mistake you make, meaning every time you get sexually aroused without wanting to, is a study method for you to figure out exactly how that happened so that it doesn't happen again. Every mistake that is made, every time there is an arousal, and you don't know how it happens, every time there's an arousal, that is an excellent opportunity for you to figure out what happened, like an investigator. How is it that I came to this arousal? Mysteriously. I want you to look on it as a very fantastically positive situation, because here it is, live, happening to you, and you want to figure out, it just happened. How did it happen? How did I get into this situation? What went on? So it's really positive. Don't think it as negative. It is absolutely positive, because influences have just come into your consciousness and you want to figure out how. It's excellent. Okay. Therefore, look at it positively, because truly you are making improvements. We know you really want to try to overcome this situation of fixation, and you are making progress. It is important not to become disheartened. Again, I state this because it is extremely important. Do not take this point lightly. Do not be disappointed with yourself. I am speaking intelligently with you. Use your intelligence. Notice that when you have guilt, you cannot think as clearly as when you do not have guilt. This guilt stops you from making progress. You might hit many setbacks and obstacles. Oh, we're in the nitty-gritty now. Meaning you're getting we're in the deep trenches here. We're giving you the inside scoop stuff. Showing you how it works. Okay. You might hit many setbacks and obstacles. What I mean is, once you start being aroused again, whether you follow through with the arousal or not, silence your mind enough to look really deeply as to what actually took place from the first instance to the moment of arousal. Okay. So, really deeply, you want to show really deeply as to what actually took place from the first instance to the moment of arousal. You must learn to see how one thought led to the next thought or series of thoughts, and then to the arousal. If you cannot remember your thoughts from the beginning, then it might be necessary to trace the thoughts backward from arousal to the beginning. Original initiating thought. If you are still having trouble remembering, then try remembering anything at all in any part of before, during, or after arousal. So if you have trouble figuring out what's initiating thought started it, and what are the thoughts that led, the interconnecting thoughts to arousal. If you cannot figure this thing out, try go backwards. Go from, see, because this arousal, once arousal is done, your consciousness comes back to normal, and you are able to think very, very clearly. So, but just a second ago you were in arousal, so you're very close to, time-wise, to the thoughts that you were thinking. So you could think of those thoughts, those last thoughts that you were thinking, and trace them back to what thoughts before that you had before then, and what thoughts before that, and what thoughts before that. Eventually, you might find the initial thought. If you have trouble figuring this thing out from the end, try imagining, try to think of any parts that you can think of. You may think of here, you may think of here, you may think of here, you may think of that. Good. And from any point that you could remember, try to expand forward somewhat and backwards somewhat. And from any point and all points that you can figure out. Anything you can remember, try to see how that thought led to what other thought going forward, or what that thought came from what thoughts. How is it that you thought of that? See? And so you might start expanding your awareness of, okay, so you might think of, I don't remember all, I remember here. Okay, from here I remember this. Oh, okay, and I remember this, and also I remember something extension here. And I know the thought here in the middle, and that now you have discovered how this thought goes all the way here. Now let's see. Do this from many points of remembrance to see if you could piece together, manage to identify, the first initiating cause of all the thoughts and their thought pathways to arousal. If you have trouble doing this completely, then prepare yourself mentally now by deciding to be mentally alert. Okay, by deciding to be mentally alert. The next time that you are getting aroused. Okay, I'm in a public place, people are walking by, so I want to have them having a little distance, because they may misunderstand what the heck I'm here doing, talking about this stuff. Okay, so if you have trouble doing this completely, that is figuring it out from initial thought, middle thoughts, and end thought, then prepare yourself mentally now. You're going to prepare yourself mentally now. You're going to, by deciding, you're going to decide to be mentally alert the next time that you are getting aroused. So, next time you're getting aroused, right now, you're going to mentally prepare. You're going to decide. You're creating a connection now when you're deciding. You're deciding that when you get aroused, you're going to be mentally alert. And how do you do that? By thinking of it right now. You are thinking that, making a connection between arousal and alert thinking, because you want to figure out what is going on. What am I thinking when I'm aroused? So that's what you're thinking. So now you're going to decide to be mentally alert. You don't want to be unconscious. You want to be mentally alert. You want to be aware. And it's fine. It doesn't go against your arousal. So actually, it's actually very good to be. It's very easy to be mentally alert and aware when that situation occurs. Also, you will do this when you're in mid-arousal or in any stage of the arousal. For example, the situation might happen very fast. You finally find yourself aroused, and you're in mid-arousal now, and then you remember, good, I have to be mentally alert. Good. You forgot to be mentally alert from the beginning, but you're in mid-arousal now, and you can be conscious and aware. Good, you remembered. Good. You could be conscious. This thought might occur to you right after arousal is complete and you have expelled, or you have completed action, and now you're alert. You're like, I have to be mentally alert. Good. You're practicing to be mentally alert. What was I thinking? You're thinking. What was I thinking? You're identifying. So, I'll read that again. Okay. Prepare yourself mentally now by deciding to be mentally alert the next time that you are getting aroused, when you are already in mid-arousal or in any stage of the arousal. Try to think clearly about the thoughts that triggered it. You are more likely able to remember in the moment of arousal because the thoughts ran through your head just moments earlier. If you still cannot do it, okay, then practice being aware of where your thoughts arise from throughout the day on various other non-sexual topics. It could be about ice cream or bicycle riding, etc. So I want you to be mentally aware, alert, right now. And when you get involved in an activity, whatever it is, opening a book, shutting a book, going to the fridge, seeing a movie, whatever you do, walk here, go there, whatever you do, be mentally alert while you make the decisions that you do. How is it that what thoughts are occurring in your mind when you get involved in an activity? What thoughts occur to you when you're thinking of whatever, of ice cream, of this, that, whatever it is? Again, you want to be aware of the initial thought, the intermediary thought, that is the thought pathways, and the in thought. You want to be conscious of why you do the things that you do during the day, whatever it is, all of it. Practice, you know. You don't have to kill yourself over it, meaning you have to suffer. You know, do some practice so that you're mentally alert. You get really good at it. You know, like for example, one day you might be doing something and suddenly the thought occurs to you, why am I doing this? And then you go, let me think of how did I get into this? I was talking with my friend, and my friend said this, and blah, blah, blah. I went to the television, blah, 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 and a thought occurred to me, I should maybe try this. And so you want to become aware. It could be about ice cream or bicycle riding, etc. Next, when you get good at it with other topics, you can apply it to sex. To become aware of how your thoughts arise regarding sex. So you practice learning how your thoughts arise using other topics, and then you get good at it when you're in sexual arousal. Practice this. It is vitally important for you to know how your thoughts generate, meaning it is vitally important for you to know how your thoughts come about. And what thought pathways they take. It is important for you to practice this, enabling you to apply it. This book is not about knowledge only. It is about applicable knowledge. These methods were applied and the results were outstanding. Therefore, apply the knowledge. Example W is reaching for something. Example X is red car and red dress. You have any questions about that? Let me know. Example Y is mental defenses penetrated by unusualness. Okay, so we are in insight 46. The weather's a bit cold. All right. A mind without any direction can be misdirected. When you draw on a blank sheet of paper, the pattern you draw stands out, making a definite impression. When you input information on a blank mind, the impressions you make stand out and make a definite impression. Therefore, a blank mind is ready for an honest observation, or it is ready for direction to be given to it. If correct direction is not given, incorrect direction has a chance of making that first definite impression and to direct or significantly impact the mind. The ideal situation is to have a blank mind without any preconceived notion. In this way, one can observe the world as it really is and come to know it. However, in our world, there are deceivers who present to us a misrepresentation of reality. Yeah, so in this world here, right now, or any world, your mind, the best situation for it to be in is to be clear, very, very clear, having no preconceptions about anything and to observe reality as it really is. However, the world that we are in now is filled with so much illusion that people scarcely get to see reality or experience reality. They're seeing the asphalt on the ground, the buildings. In London, you rarely get to see the sun. Not only is it because it's cloudy, but also the buildings. When you're walking through the buildings literally cover the sun. You can't see the sun. When the sun is out, you can't see it. Even when the sun is out, you can't see the moon. I remember going 3 years in London, and I saw the moon, I don't know, a few times, possibly 3. I had to actually search for it because I couldn't see it. I was behind buildings, The wind barely gets in there, So we're not experiencing reality as it really is. We're exposed to so much illusion that those illusions make a definite impression on the blank mind. So it is advisable to establish our mind in some positive and stable attribute. Okay, so I'm going to read this from the explanation because it's very important. Having a blank mind is good. And as stated, it is an ideal state for us to observe reality as best as we can. However, since we live in a world of manipulation on many fronts, it is advisable to establish our mind in some positive and stable attribute. So in this world, you don't want to have a blank mind and be exposed by the illusion and thus be powerfully affected by it. No. You want to now establish your mind in some positive attribute. So the mind has the first impression being made by this positivity of whatever it is. Let's say peace or love or whatever you want to say. So when it sees illusion, it doesn't just grab onto it and doesn't allow a powerful effect on the mind, because the first impression of the mind was done by peace, by love, by all these things. Very good, yes, yeah. Very good. For example, a blank mind can be established in peace, confidence, truth, or calm observation. If the mind is not established in stability or in a direction, it can be impacted by any outside sense of direction. An individual has to control his own mind. For those who are Puritans, of course, you can have your mind in a state of complete naturalness, meaning blank mind, which is not even focused on peace. This state is a carefree, non-attached state, where the mind can attach itself to any one task or many, and disengage similarly, and enjoy its freedom. Actually, it's the person's freedom. And freedom of choice to be disengaged or engaged in any activity. The depth of this topic can get too detailed for the purposes of this book, therefore we stop. Note the purposeful stop, an example of controlling my own mind, the ability to disengage at will. So here I'm talking about, I'm not going to go into too much esoteric stuff because it's not the subject of this book. But basically, for those who are Puritans, yes, it is recommended for, if you want to be a Puritan, and meaning that is to say, to have a mind that is blank, not just be established in love and peace and whatever, just to have a blank mind and experience reality as it really is, Yeah, then you can get into any activity that you want to, whatever it is, talking about positive activities. And stop anytime, disengage anytime. You're not bound by anything. You actually take pleasure from your free mind, the blankness. All right. Your freedom to be able to get involved in any activity and disengage. It's very freeing, very